In this video, we will cover the toolbar and the dynamic shapes and actors it contains. Our first option is the 2D shape menu. This will be the menu you will use most often for 2D overlay graphics. The difference between the shapes inside and the standard editor shapes is that these are dynamic shapes. I want to explain this situation using our first example, the rectangle. After selecting the rectangle, click on the viewport screen and drag your mouse. If you want to create a square, you need to do this while holding down Shift. However, you can also grab the corner points of a square shape and turn it back into a rectangle. After creating your shape similar to a lower third, we can start examining the properties of this shape in the Details panel. Add bevel and slant to your shape. In addition to general bevel controls, the bevel of each corner can be edited individually. Alignment is one of the most critical properties because it determines where your pivot point is, which is the center point that mesh size changes will reference. For example, if your alignment, that is your pivot point, is on the left, your shape will grow and shrink to the right. This is a feature we constantly use, especially in examples like lower thirds. Under Advanced, you will see the Create Static Mesh button. If you are not going to change your shape during animation, or if you want to use it as an asset separately, you can save your shape as a static mesh and also use it as a static mesh. Under Material, by using Simple, you can also change the color of your shape. Instead of using a solid color, you can also use other options in the material style. Linear gradient is one of these. You can control all gradient properties from here. Another material style is the texture option. You can simply add any texture you want here. To make your material unlit, use the Use Unlit Material boolean. Currently, your material is using only one side of your shape. To make it two-sided, use the Use Two-Sided Material boolean. You can control whether your material's translucency is enabled with the relevant boolean. I can explain exactly what this means with a simple example. Create two rectangles and place them on top of each other. As you can see, despite overlapping in the third dimension, they can be ordered according to their creation order. However, if you disable the translucency value of these two, you will create a Z-fight situation. Another useful feature is that this shape also has its own material UV settings. There are two modes in material UV. The first is preserve ratio. If you use this feature, the texture you use will be cropped according to your shape's mesh size. But if you choose stretch to fit, your texture will be stretched according to your shape. Anchor preset determines which point of the shape transforms like rotation will reference. Or you can scale your material, you can offset and rotate it, or you can flip it horizontally and vertically. To work with a fixed size, use the mesh size property. For example, you want to create a 1920 by 1080 screen. There are three different ways to do this. First, create a square. To check whether the UV is suitable for 1920 by 1080, I will use a 1920 by 1080 texture on these shapes. For this, in the Details panel, set your material style to texture. Add your 1920 by 1080 texture to the relevant area and use Unlit. After creating your texture, to make it exactly the same, hold down Alt and drag to create two copies of it. For the leftmost shape, I will deform it using the scale under the Transform menu in the Details panel. For the middle example, I will use the material settings in the Details. For the rightmost example, I will use mesh size and the global tiling setting in the Material Designer, which we will examine in more depth later. Let's start with the one on the left. If it's not open, unlock the scale property. Enter 1.920 for the Y value. Enter 1.080 for the Z value. Then lock your scale value again. As you can see, our screen is ready. However, your mesh sizes, X and Y values are the same. In the middle example, use the material settings. If you use size to texture next to the texture, your 1920 by 1080 screen will be ready instantly. It is quite practical. In our rightmost and final example, First, select Material Type as Material Designer. In the panel that opens, select the Emissive Material preset and create your material. Assign your material to the layer in the Emissive Color channel and return to the Details panel. Set the Mesh Sizes Ratio mode to Free. Enter 192 for the X value and 108 for the Y value of the mesh size. As you can see, changing the mesh size did not deform the UV, so the texture was automatically cropped. This is a good example to understand the difference between using mesh size and using scale. Return to your Shapes Material Designer. Under Global Settings, we will use Global Tiling. Make sure the lock is open. Enter 1.08 for the X value and 1.92 for the Y value. Then lock the value and set the X value to 1. As you can see, we achieved the same result. We can move on to our other objects. Square, which is right next to rectangle, is basically the same as rectangle. Therefore, I will continue with ellipse. As with every object, you can adjust this shape using the transform values. However, if you examine the properties under shape, you will notice that there are features different from rectangle or square. The first is sides. The second is angle degree. The third is start degree. Please remember while examining these properties that these features can also be added to the sequence as keyframes for animation. They are dynamic features. Delete the ellipse and add a regular polygon. This shape also has the sides parameter. Regular polygon does not have angle degree, but each corner can be beveled. Our next shape component is freehand polygon. With this, you can create any shape you want with any number and location of points, and each corner can be beveled independently. A very useful tool for creating custom shapes. Add a ring. Ring has all the features like size, angle degree, and start degree found in ellipse. It differs from ellipse with an additional feature. This feature is inner size. You can use this feature together with the other existing ones. Star offers us a wide variety of shape variations thanks to its parameters. The first parameter is points. The second is inner size fraction. The third is bevel parameters. Arrow has 5 parameters: ratio arrow line, ratio line height, ratio arrow Y, ratio line Y. With the both side arrows Boolean, you can have a double-sided arrow. You can also use chevron and line to create dynamic shapes. Our second tab is our 3D shapes. Add all of them to the viewport to examine them. The basic feature of cube is that it has a bevel parameter. Another distinguishing feature is that we can assign a different material to each face separately, and for each we can assign a different material type. For example, using simple material on one face and material designer on another. To see better, I will show in perspective mode. If you don't need multiple materials, you can enable the use single material option. The basic and distinctive feature of sphere is its longitude and latitude parameters. Start longitude degree, end longitude degree, latitude degree, and finally start latitude degree. Allow me to quickly show the remaining actors along with their parameters. Cone, cylinder, and finally torus. The third tab is Actors. The actors in this tab are very important because we use them constantly in our workflows. The first of these actors is the text actor. Let's examine the properties of this actor in the Details panel. From text properties, you can enter any text you want. With the font property, you can use any font you want. Or you can change the typeface of this font. If you want to use all uppercase letters, use the Enforce Uppercase boolean. The character menu is very useful because you can change the kerning, relative location, rotation, or scale of each character in the text you wrote. You can also control the visibility of each character and add it to your animation. This feature is very useful in terms of enabling different scenarios in animation. Layout is one of the menus we use most when working with text. You can set your horizontal or vertical alignment here. Based on this alignment, you determine the directions in which your text will extend or shorten. For example, if your horizontal alignment is center, your text will grow in both directions, to the right and left. But if you set your alignment to left, your text will only grow and shrink to the right. Apart from this, you can increase or decrease the spacing between letters with tracking. To control the distance between your lines, use line spacing. If you only need to change the spacing between words, use word spacing. When producing overlay graphics, we generally don't want our text to overflow outside the canvas. For this, we need to use the max width and max height tools. With this feature, you can keep your text within the desired area. However, when using these features, it's very important to understand two different parameters. The first is max width behavior. The second is scale proportionally. If you use scale as the behavior and turn off scale proportionally, your text will not move to the next line and will be stretched. If you turn on scale proportionally, your text will return to its original font scale, and since your text is long, it will shrink. To have the text move to the next line as it grows, set the behavior to wrap and scale. As you can see, you are able to create a paragraph. We can move on to our geometry features. Motion Design Text Actor is basically a 3D actor. In fact, if you look at the very top of the Details panel, you will see that our actor's name is actually Text 3D Actor. Therefore, you can add extrude or bevel to this actor. With Use Outline, you can get outline lines for your text. And of course, you can adjust the thickness of your outline. A core feature of the character menu we mentioned earlier is also found within geometry, character pivot alignment horizontal. For example, if you select center, your character will rotate or scale from the exact middle. But if you select left, it will rotate or scale based on its left corner as a reference. The material of texts consists of 4 different slots. Front color, back color, extrude color, bevel color. As with shapes, you can select your material style and blend mode. You can check whether you are using unlit material. Now we can continue with Null Actor. To understand the Null Actor, you need to open a window, and this window is one of the cornerstones of the innovations brought by Motion Design, the Motion Design Outliner. It is generally faster and more effective to create the Null Actor from the Motion Design Outliner rather than the toolbar. For example, you have multiple actors and want to group them together. Select all the actors you want and click the null actor shortcut at the top right. All your objects will automatically be grouped under this null actor. And like other actors, you can control the transform values of this null actor. Spline Actor is a useful tool, especially during animation, that allows actors to move along a specific path. By holding down Alt and dragging from its points, you can add new points to your spline. You can easily select the control points you have created for your spline from the Details panel. Especially in complex graphics, being able to easily select these points saves time. You can control all your control points individually and change their curve type if necessary. To better understand why and how it is used, open the Operator Stack panel, which we will examine in detail later. Add any actor you want to move along this path and go to your actor's operator stack settings. In the operator stack, add spline path as a modifier under modifiers. Select the spline actor you created as the spline actor reference. If you change the progress value, your object will move along this spline. For now, you can close your operator stack panel. Add SVG actor. Add the SVG data you want. You can set your SVG to be 2D or 3D. You can scale it. Perhaps most importantly, you can add extrude or bevel. And you can turn it into a 3D object. If you need to extrude all the elements in your SVG separately, use Shape Offset. If you want to use your SVG data as a static mesh, you can bake it to a blueprint and save it as a static mesh inside a blueprint. With Media Plate, you can quickly play the media you want inside Motion Design. Select the video you want from the playlist and play your video from the control menu. That's all. We will examine cloner and effectors in detail in a separate video. Finally, if you want to add standard static meshes from the editor instead of dynamic ones from the toolbar, use the Meshes menu. From the camera menu, you can add a camera or its related components to the viewport. If you need additional lights, you can also add various light types that are available by default in the editor. See you in our next video. Thank you for listening.